I'm hearing that it's really important on focusing to raise awareness with registrants and share information and resources with them so that they know what they can do and what they should take note of as well. So taking this into consideration from a registrar's perspective, would you have any recommendation on how you could deliver this messaging clearly and effectively to your registrants so that they know that they should take note and manage their own domain names?
Yeah, I mean, as a registrar, there are several things that we do in order to be able to, make sure that our registrant is fully appraised of both their rights and their responsibilities when it comes to the domain name that they hold. And also, how they can actually safeguard their own interests in terms of their ownership of their domain name, right? So what happens is a lot of that, as long as you're working with say, a ODN or a big rock, you would find that these sort of, informative messaging or, whatever communication you need to have comes directly from the registrar, where it's easier for us to control that dynamic, right? But on the other hand, if you are working with a a web developer or a web designer or someone like that, you're probably not familiar with who your registrar is. And you hit the nail right on the head, right? If there was one thing that I would want a registrar to know, right away, go and figure out who your registrar is. If you've got a domain name registered today, look up and go. Like Brian also reinforced this message, right? I mean, find out who your registrar is, who you should be hearing from. So that kind of helps drive all future recourse for you. I mean, anything that could potentially go wrong with your domain name, this is that one party that you need to interact with, right? So we kind of break down that message over, or sort of like a 3-tier model, right? 1, what are the things you need to be aware of? 2, what are the things that you need to do? And 3, what are the things that you need to be alert to in the future, right? So the first thing we ask is, apart from just knowing who your registrar is, figure out what your registrar's processes are, right? Go to their website, check out, what kind of policies they have in terms of supporting the domain names that you manage. Figure out, if something were to go wrong with your domain name, what phone number do you need to call? Is there a chat service? What email address do you need to send an email to? Beyond that, we come to the actual process, right? How do you make sure that you manage your domain name well? The most fundamental thing is make sure that you are the actual registrar, right? And you would be shocked. It would be the most fundamental thing that you would expect. If you are registering a domain name, then you need to be the domain holder, right? So if you just bought a property, to use the example that we've reported so often in this session, if you just lease the property, the lease has to be in your name, doesn't it? But oftentimes, and you'll be surprised at how often it is, people have no clue who the registrar of their domain name is. So when you look at the registrar or ICANN, we are essentially relying on the information that's put up in the public records for that domain name. The moment we see a certain party is the registrant, we are sort of duty bound to acknowledge that yes, this person as the domain holder has the rights to manage this domain name. So in a scenario where you are registering this domain name through a web designer or web developer or somebody like that, make sure that that person isn't the registrant, because they are simply a service provider to you. The domain name, the lease in this question, is in your name, and it has to accurately represent that status. Now, making sure that your name is in there is just the first step, right? The second step is making sure that all of the communication channels that are set up for that domain name are also directed towards you, right? So whenever you're setting up your registrant information as the domain holder, you will not just provide your name or your company name, but you'll also provide your full address, you provide your email address and your phone number, right? So in a scenario where the registrar has to be verified, so if the registrar needs to know who the correct owner is, we need to be able to reach out to you. We need to be able to send you an email, or, call you up and ask you about, the well-being of your business or your domain name. How do we actually support you? If these details are misrepresented, we end up speaking to the wrong person, and we're not able to support you in just being able to secure your domain name in the right way. Beyond that, make sure that you have complete records of all your transactions with this web developer, designer, or even your registrar for that matter, right? Because if there were a dispute tomorrow, for whatever reason, there is a confusion or some sort of disagreement in terms of what you actually paid for your website. But paying for your domain name has to be fundamentally different from paying for everything else, right? Because now that it's an asset in your hand, that is the only portion of your web presence that cannot be changed. Now that if you wanted to ever do a Google search, you will go to google.com. If Google decides to change that domain name, it's going to lead to a massive amount of confusion. And the same applies to your business or your venture. If you decide to change your address, it's going to lead to a lot of misdirection, a lot of confusion. So the simplest thing for you to do is safeguard your interest in the domain name. Your hosting can be changed, your email can be changed, you can apply all sorts of other functionality, but your domain name, because of all of the value that you've added to it, is now unique. So make sure that, anything that could sort of let other people take control of it is completely eliminated from that picture, right?